Well, I hope that's recording. I hope that's a recording and I hope it's all clear. Yeah. All right, welcome back, everybody. So today I have I thought it was pro-Beijing, but according to the email, pro-China guy to come on the show. And hopefully he will be able to convince the rest of you guys that authoritarianism is the way to go and that Australia should side with China. So let's kick it off by you just introducing yourself and telling them who you are, where you're from, what's your channel, and before we get into it.
Okay, cool. I grew up in Sydney, and when I was 18, I moved to China, where I spent 2 years. I was more or less sponsored by the Chinese government and the Confucius Institute to live on scholarship there for those 2 years. I also did a couple of months at the Australian Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, learning about some Australian business, some Chinese business, etc. And so would I say I'm pro-China? I don't know. I would say I'm pro-China on a range of things. Particularly, I think often the mainstream media commentary gets quite a lot of issues wrong regarding China. And I think particularly recently, there's a lot of anti-China rhetoric, a lot of posturing against China, people talking about decoupling, people talking about treating our relationship with China as a kind of pre-war situation, both of which I don't like and I think will be bad for both Australia and China in the immediate future.
All right. Well, I've got a few questions. I went through the interview. So what I did was I went through the debate that I saw, and obviously I was mentioned, so I thought that I would send you an email and see if you can come on here and speak to me. So personally, I'll just kick it off with my opinion. My opinion is that Australia and the West is basically becoming more and more of a plutocracy. So what we have is the very wealthy, the 1%, holding a lot of the capital. And then what they do is they control the political systems, and they bring up wealthy. They're wealthy, then they hand a lot of that money over to their children. Their children quite often go to universities and it's paid for. Anybody can pass university. All you have to do is have enough money to turn up, really. You don't really have to be very smart to get yourself a degree these days. The attendance rate and how many people that pass is quite high these days. So what we got is people getting degrees. Obviously, they come from wealthy families, and then they have their connections, and then they rise to the top. And what we have is we don't have a proper meritocracy where a lot of the competent people rise to the top. And to control the power within a lot of Western countries, we have a lot of the 1% signing deals and getting rich off an authoritarian government, China. Now, we are not really, I don't think so, unless you want to discuss it. We're not really discussing communism. I guess we're really commentating about authoritarianism. And from the sounds of things, you like to associate that with a bit of geopolitics. And what we're doing is we are making our decisions and pitching our cases on what we would, I guess the behavioral economics of the people in all of the countries, and how each of those countries will intermix with the alliance structure and who's going to win at the end. So we're really predicting the future here. And you obviously think that we should side with China. I think that we should side with the United States. And what do you think about that? I've got some questions here as well.
Okay, cool. Well, there's a bunch of stuff you mentioned. I'll just talk about the kind of China aspect at this point. I don't advocate, I've never advocated leaving a security alliance with America. I think America is basically our best friend. We do a lot of dumb stuff together as well. I think an economic relationship with China can exist in the context of a security alliance with America. And I think that's going to benefit everyone involved. I think we just have to be a bit smarter about how we go about it, I would say, to summarize my position.
Okay, well, the fact of the matter is, when you have great power politics, you have to choose a side. Australia is an island, but we cannot be an island. Now, the United States wants us to be 100% on their side, and China wants us to be 100% on their side. So I'm sorry, but a lot of the fools in the past have made that mistake, thinking that we can sit on the fence, and that is what has got us into this situation we're in today. So we cannot sit on the fence. So we got to choose. And so that's why I assume that you're going to choose China and I choose the United States.
No, I don't believe that's true at all. I mean, even Scott Morrison recently went to America and said our relationship with China is a special one, and we come at it from a different perspective than America does. I also don't think that having economic trade ties with China, where trade is mutually beneficial, necessarily means siding with China. I don't think there's an inevitable war coming. I think we can avoid it, although I think there's a range of people who do want war.
I didn't say anything about war. We are a part of an alliance system, and when the economies of both of those two great powers come under jeopardy, they choose the alliance system and they make the smaller powers choose. Now, it is a fact that we do need to choose. It doesn't mean that we need to decouple entirely. I never said that. I don't think anybody...
What do you mean the fact we need to choose? What makes you say that's a fact?
Well, it's a fact. So John Mearsheimer...
Scott Morrison doesn't think it's a fact. I don't think it's a fact. A whole lot of people don't think it's a fact.
What Scott Morrison tells to you publicly is very different from what Scott Morrison is told by Washington privately, obviously. And I guess we have differing opinions, but John Mearsheimer came here last year and he told the Australian people that we need to choose, or we will become an enemy of the United States. Fact. So we need to choose. We cannot sit on the fence when it comes to great power politics, when it comes to something like this. Look at the Soviet Union. Everyone needed to choose, right? That's how they broke up. They made a decision, and this is what's happening right now. So the other option is what is up here. We got Hugh White in How to Defend Australia. One of the suggestions that he makes is that we could possibly get nuclear weapons, and a lot of the greenies aren't going to like that because they don't like those nukes. They don't like nuclear power. We have a lot of the vast majority of the Australian people, they're against all of these type of things. But Hugh White did suggest, okay, we go it alone. We try to trade with both. We suffer what we will from both of them. We get nuclear weapons, which will obviously make us an enemy of both of them, and they won't necessarily trust us too much when we have nuclear weapons. We could possibly become the North Korea of South Asia if we get nuclear weapons and we go it alone. But I don't think we can sit on the fence any longer. Fact.
I think we have a disagreement about what the word fact means initially. I mean, if Scott Morrison is saying we don't need to choose, Donald Trump has not told us we need to choose, Xi Jinping has not told us we need to choose, I think you're obviously saying something that nobody else is. And when you say we need to choose, I don't also know exactly what you mean. If you're saying if we choose America, we don't necessarily need to decouple from China. And if we choose China, I don't know what that would mean either. The option that I support and which I don't see being thrown around at all is actually to win over the Chinese middle class, which has been the beautiful story over the last 50 years of hundreds of millions of people being lifted out of poverty. And this is a group of people who are very smart, very hardworking. They often speak 3 languages, at least Mandarin, their own dialect, and English. They usually all play a musical instrument. A lot of them get educated in Western universities. And if we can actually win over the Chinese middle class, they can actually act as a really strong bulwark against the overreach of the CCP. And so that's the pro-peace, pro-trade and pro-security position that I would support.
Yeah, so I'm pro-peace as well. But you see, what we've done is most countries, I dare say all countries, choose security over economic prosperity. So what we've done is we have chosen our security, which is the United States, over our economic prosperity. Now, we didn't tell China that we didn't want to sell them resources anymore. We didn't tell them that we didn't want to sell beef to them anymore. We didn't tell them that we didn't want to sell our coal and our resources, and we didn't want to sell all of these products right now, and they're threatening to not buy even more. That's sanctions. That's an act of war. Now, we didn't choose not to sell it to China. China is sanctioning us because we have chosen to remain sovereign and to look for spies within this country and try to protect our sovereign rights as a nation. So I don't know where you're getting this idea that we're deliberately shooting ourselves in the foot and destroying our own economy for no reason, because that's absolutely ridiculous. And I'd like to throw it in again, comrade, fact.
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't like the tariffs and that China has put on Australian goods. At the same time, it's not an act of war. No one has declared war. No one is even really suggesting war. And I don't think we have destroyed the Australian economy. What will destroy the Australian economy is deciding to decouple from China or stop trading with China, which is one of the options being presented and supported by a range of anti-China commentators.
Who's saying that? I don't know anybody that wants to destroy our own economy. China's sanctioning us. We want to sell whatever we can to China. We want to continue to trade with China. We want to continue to remain wealthy. We don't want to live in poverty. That's absolutely ridiculous argument. We want to remain safe with the United States. We want our ships to remain safe going through the South China Sea, and we want to remain wealthy. Now, who is actually saying that we should destroy our own economy? Because this person needs their head read.
Yeah, dude, I don't know who you're arguing with, because you're arguing against points that I haven't made.
That's what you just said. We're destroying our own economy. China's sanctioning us. Have we told China that we do not want to sell them something? Is there anything that we have told China that we don't want to sell? Or is it China actually telling us that they're sanctioning us? They're putting tariffs on us. They've militarized the South China Sea to threaten our maritime trade. What have we done to deliberately destroy our own economy? Why is that funny? It's a fact. This is what's happening. I don't know what world you're living in, to be honest.
Well, I don't know who you're arguing against. I've never said we've destroyed the Australian economy. What I said is that if we pursue decoupling and if we pursue stopping trade with China, that will destroy the Australian economy.
But how's that going to happen? We're not going to destroy our own economy. We're not going to say, look, we're not going to trade with you. China's sanctioning us. It's geo-economic coercion. That's the game that they play. They did it to South Korea. They did it with exports out of the Philippines. They're in and out of Japan. They're causing trouble with Japan. They're doing it to Vietnam. They're doing to all of their neighbors. And now they're bullying us because we are friends with the United States. We've been friends with the United States for over 100 years. So how are we destroying our own economy? It doesn't even make sense. We've got products to sell. We want to sell them everywhere, as well as protecting ourselves.
Okay, I'm going to say this clearly one more time so you understand me. We have not yet destroyed the Australian economy. We will destroy it if we pursue decoupling and stop trading with China. And that is the option which is being presented by people like you, for example, at the start when you say we have to choose between America and China, right? And presumably what you mean is you say if we choose security with America over economic relationship with China and we stop our economic relationship with China, then that's what's going to destroy the Australian economy. So that's not the position which is being had now in the Australian government. And I believe the Australian government's doing a decent job. But I also believe China's put tariffs and different embargoes on a range of countries at different times. I don't like it when they do it, but it's also very clear that we can develop that relationship and improve it quickly. And I don't believe those tariffs will be a long-term thing.
Okay, so decoupling. How is this decoupling that you speak of going to play out? How is it going to happen? Because if I don't understand your point, please explain it to me.
Okay, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, right? The decoupling suggestion has been put forward by a range of people in America, and I've seen it come up a couple of times in the Australian media, which basically says we need to kind of slowly but surely wean our economic relationship with China off, make kind of Australia self-reliant, not reliant on China, and we trade with other countries like India, Singapore, Japan instead of China, right? That's what decoupling means. And I think that I've seen that argument come up quite a lot, and I think it's a bad strategy. And I think that's what I would believe you mean when you say we need to choose America over China. I mean, what do you actually mean when you say we should choose America over China? Do you mean we should still trade with China, or do you mean we should end our relationship?
When China puts tariffs on us and use geoeconomic coercion on us, they do that in order to ask for something in return. What they're doing is they're threatening our economy and saying, look, we're not going to buy things from you unless you do what we tell you to do. And what is that? What do they want? Well, they're constantly bullying us. They're trying to buy our politicians. They're trying to tell us what our foreign policy should be. We're a sovereign damn nation. We're a sovereign nation, okay? And just so that we can sell a little bit of resources here and there, we should not sell out the entire country and our freedom. And that's what decoupling, when people talk about decoupling, China's doing the decoupling. So what we're doing is we're getting ahead of the game, and we're diversifying our foreign trade just in case China decouples from us. We don't want to decouple. Nobody has said that we want to decouple and destroy our own economy. That is an absolutely ridiculous argument. I've heard decoupling as in let's diversify our trade just in case China cuts us off and sanctions us. So why is that even so funny? I don't think you fully understand what is really going on out there. We haven't sanctioned China. What we did was we asked for an investigation into the virus, and then they sanctioned us. And sanctions, before you said that sanctions is not an act of war. Sanctions is an act of war. So what you do is you sanction a country, you try to weaken their economy and weaken their ability to build their military to protect themselves. And what happens after that? Military engagement. So yes, it is an act of war. It is officially an act of war. And I know you love this word, fact, comrade. I'm enjoying this. This is fun. I'm enjoying this.
I'm sure you are, because you get to go on a little roll and at the end say that argument, I've never heard of it. When I'm the one who's never made those arguments in the first place. It's happened a few times already.
You said decoupling. Who's decoupling then? Look, if we can't get to the bottom of who's decoupling and who's sanctioning who, I'm pretty sure it's China. And if you can't actually name anyone who's actually, if you can name one person who has actually said, look, we should stop all trade with China. If you can name one of those people, was it Scott Morrison? You mentioned Scott Morrison before. I don't know anybody that has actually said that. It is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I got to say, I'm enjoying this. I really am. I've got some more questions. We can move on if you want.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to go anywhere because you're not listening to what I'm saying.
I am listening to what you're saying. Well, let's get on to another question, okay? Look, I saw in the debate you said we should allow Hong Kong immigrants into Australia. And then you went on to saying that we should give Hong Kong their own city within Australia, as in let them create their own country on Australia's landmass. I don't know what you'd call it. You would call it the new Hong Kong down in Australia. But that's what you said in the debate. I'm pretty sure, we can go back and have a look at the debate, but I'm pretty sure you said we should give them their own city in Australia and just hand it over and they can create their own country within Australia. That's so generous of you, comrade. Now, I don't know what to say. What do you think? What does that mean?
Well, so you got about 50% of that correct. I said we should take in a bunch of Hong Kong refugees. And I just kind of floated this idea that I've been thinking about, is that we could build a new city, and it won't be like a Hong Kong nation, but it can be a place like Australia doesn't have the infrastructure in major cities right now to support a big influx of new people. But what's so valuable about Hong Kong is not its buildings, it's not its city, it's not its infrastructure, it's the creative energy of the people. And if we can bring all those people into Australia. And if we can find a place to accommodate them, I think it could be a really beautiful thing. And I think that we could build a new city, and not to say it would be a different country or a different nation, but I was saying it could be like when you have like what some people would call somewhat a capitalist paradise, at least previously in Hong Kong. You could set up a city with as like a special economic zone in Australia, to have kind of minimal taxes, minimal regulatory requirements, and I think you could build a really beautiful city. That was the point I was making.
So this special economic zone will only be for the Hong Kong people, and like a gated community that excludes everybody else. I bet the Indigenous Australians would love that idea. They're going to love that one. How does that work? Am I allowed to enter it? Or are there PLA military guarding this gated community you speak of?
Well, of course, anyone would be able to go, right? I haven't thought about this as a real idea. I was just floating it.
No, you haven't thought about it. That's the problem with this plutocracy that we have in Australia. See, we haven't
had an honest question the whole time. You're just trying to set me up, bro.
I'm not trying to set you up.
You are fake news, Dave.
I'm not fake news. What are you talking about?
Fake news. You're exactly fake news. You like to see them gotcha people.
It's not a gotcha. Look, okay. Well, obviously the Hong Kong city I'll let you think about that one a little bit more. I noticed that you in the so Confucius Institutes. You studied Mandarin, I understand, at the Confucius Institutes, and you defend them.
Yeah, so the Confucius Institute sponsors like Chinese classrooms, right? So I did Chinese at my high school. Confucius Institute then comes and sponsors that Chinese class. I then got a scholarship through the Confucius Institute to study at a Chinese university, right? So they're kind of like the funding body. They provide money. They also provide like often teachers from China to come to like for example, my high school classroom, we had like a full-time language assistant teacher who was studying to be a teacher from a Chinese university. So that's the kind of support they provide. And then the Institute gave me a scholarship to go and study a semester of Mandarin in Shanghai.
Okay, Shanghai, love it. So you were writing Chinese.
I was writing Chinese.
Were you taught how to write Chinese?
Yeah.
Okay, what were you taught? What type of Chinese were you taught to write?
Mandarin, simplified Mandarin. Well, it's all Chinese characters are the same, and so the written language is actually unified, although there are dialects which pronounce them in different ways.
Although my understanding is there's a different type of language that is written in Taiwan, so it's a different one.
No, so my understanding is, so in 1949, after the Communist Party came into power, one of the things they did was they kind of standardized the language across mainland China, and they took a bunch of the most commonly used words and just simplified them down, right? So each character might contain 50% of the strokes, right? That's why it's called simplified. And so I could be wrong on this. This would be a dumb mistake to make if I was. But my understanding is that Taiwan continues to use the traditional characters instead of the simplified. Now they're essentially the same. They haven't gone through the simplification process.
Yeah. So well, that's right. There's two different ways of writing Chinese. Now, I guess in the Confucius Institute, they would have taught you mainland China's way.
Yeah.
Now, did you ask the question about Taiwan? Were you allowed to discuss Taiwan at all in this Confucius Institute? I know this seems like a bit of a gotcha, but I think that this is a legitimate question that should be discussed. If you're learning Chinese, why is it different from Taiwan? And if you're not allowed to talk about Taiwan, then that's a restriction of speech. And I don't think that people should be restricted from how they... it seems like a gotcha, but you're just handing this to me on a fucking platter, okay? But seriously, Taiwan, Tibet, Tiananmen Square. These are the three T's. These are forbidden in Confucius Institutes. And as a freedom-loving person who thinks
How do you know they're forbidden in Confucius Institute?
Because they are.
How do you know?
Okay, then did you discuss them?
Yeah, well, we've had broad discussions on different things at certain times, but the Confucius Institute is actually it sponsors language learning, not cultural learning. So you can do some calligraphy classes if you want to, which are like extracurricular, but you're actually only in there discussing, doing language. So we never really had any political discussions or
This is not really political. This is not really political at all. This is really,
it's not language, and you learn language there. You don't learn other things.
But you learn how to write. And how, if you're learning how to write on mainland and you travel to Taiwan, therefore, you know, you're going to have to write in a different way. And that's the whole point of learning Chinese. Now, you say that you had broad conversations. Did you actually discuss the Dalai Lama, Tiananmen Square, Tibet, Taiwan, and all of the things that do make up their language today and how it's changed? Because it has changed, as you said, you know, since the Cultural Revolution, when all the books were burnt, they had to rewrite it and they wanted to differentiate themselves from Taiwan. Now, that is a legitimate question that shouldn't be, you know, it shouldn't be political at all, right? And if you can't ask that question, what are you learning? Propaganda? Hell, I thought I was the propaganda wing. I thought I was the CIA. I thought I'm the damn ASIO here. But what do you think about that? We can move on to the next question if you want.
Well, when you're in a class of language, right, you're there to learn language, and that's what you do. That takes up all your class time. Now, occasionally before and after class, if you want to have a casual chat to the teacher or the people around you, you can. And we have done before, and I've probably discussed things like Taiwan with or Tibet with my language teachers, but it doesn't come up in the curriculum. And it's not, I mean, they don't teach you traditional characters when you study it at Australian universities either. You go to any language school, they'll teach you simplified Chinese, right? One, because it's really the traditional characters aren't used very widely. I'd probably guarantee that every single person in Hong Kong would also be able to write simplified.
Well, I guess they're forced to now, aren't they? I guess they're forced to toe the party line these days in Hong Kong. Or bang, 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 bang.
It's just a better language. It's just a better language system, right? If you want to learn a language and there's an option to do it, you know, why would you learn Old English when you can learn English, like modern English, right? It's like trying to learn how to write the English that's in, you know, the Bible from like 300 years ago, right? It's better to learn modern English.
Yeah, and then we learn Shakespeare, and then we have a little discussion about it and go, why don't we speak like that anymore? And then the teacher explains it to us with honesty and the truth. But yeah, I guess, you know, we don't need to go into 100 million people being killed by Chairman Mao and burning all the books and the Cultural Revolution and things like that. Hopefully you don't want that to happen in Australia because that's where we're headed if we side with China, by the way. But let's move on to the next question. All right. There was a lot of what about isms in this discussion. I had a look at this debate that you had, and there was a lot of what about isms. It was like the British created the opium wars to sell drugs, and I totally agree. They were drug dealers back then, you know? But that doesn't give China the right to come and kill Australians today. I saw a meme recently where
Where is China killing Australians today?
Well, right now we have an Australian who has been arrested and he is going to face the firing squad. He's an Australian actor. So that's a fact. You can Google it. They're actually killing an Australian. So he's actually going to kill an Australian. And it happens to be right at the exact same time that we asked for an investigation into this virus. So it is a politically motivated murder of an Australian citizen who, from all accounts, disappeared 7 years in China, and they were holding him as a blue chip weapon against us, the same way they did it with the Canadians as well. As soon as they arrested Meng Wanzhou, next thing you know, they got all of these Canadians were getting arrested just for minding their own business. I guess that's the same way when some booksellers were selling books in Hong Kong, they just started disappearing as well. And the Australian government through Smart Traveller has just announced a warning to all Australians in China. There's a possibility of arbitrary, I can't even pronounce it, detention. Now, so yes, there is no, well, you were saying that, not me. So I watched the debate. There was a lot of whataboutisms. So the British Empire did all these bad things 200 years ago. And so therefore China has every right to go and kill and murder and invade anybody they want today. What do you think about that? Is it good that China's doing that?
Well, that's not what I said at all. And you could take any part of that discussion we said on any range of issues and say, how does that relate to this other point that wasn't actually in the debate that you've just brought up?
But Tim actually during the debate actually asked you, he said, look, do two wrongs make a right? From memory. Anyway, I didn't watch.
Tell him what I said? Do you want to tell him what I said?
Well, you said two wrongs don't make a right.
Yes.
That's what you said.
So I fully agree. That I don't defend any extrajudicial arrest. I don't like it. I'm a big freedom lover as a person. I think that there's a range of sins that China is definitely guilty of, and imprisoning people arbitrarily is one of them. And I haven't read much into this at all, into this specific case for the guy being arrested and put on death row.
It's only like a week old, like maybe 2 weeks old now. He's an Australian actor, well-known guy. From what we understand, he was doing business in China. The company that he was working for or working with, he was doing some form of business. They wanted to steal his money, which is, that's how the Chinese are, you do business over there. They want to get their hands on your cash. Right. And so what the story is,
hey, you're saying a lot of dumb things right now. Like what makes you, have you ever done business in China? Like what makes you say they want to do that? So many Australians do business in China, right? And we have a $285 billion trade relationship. That wouldn't happen if all they want to do is grab your cash and run.
Well, yes. In China, when you do business in China, you have to sign up to their rules. A lot of technology transfer. There's a lot of businesses that have gone into China, and their business partner has stolen the keys and locked them out of their business. So there's so many Americans and Australians that have been ripped off in China. And they've complained about it. And this is part of the reason why someone who I deem to be quite pro Beijing, by the way, Professor Kishore Mahbubani, he wrote a book called Has China Won? And in that book, you should definitely read it. He talks about the reason why the business community is not defending China, because they've been ripped off so heavily within China, because they sign up to these agreements, they go over there, they take their technology, they start up a business, and then the local partner steals their technology, steals their intellectual, steals everything they can get their hands on, and hacks the businesses back in the United States. And this is partly why the business community is not defending China. Kishore Mahbubani, professor, ex-dean of Singapore University, he talks about that in his book, Has China Won? So I recommend you have a look at that. He's quite pro-China. He's quite China-leaning. And he still admits that there's a lot of bad business practices that happen in China and people get ripped off all the time. So back to this guy, this Australian guy that was doing business in China. When he left, apparently his business partners left drugs in his bag so that he would get caught. And then he got arrested. And then he spent 7 years in jail and all of his assets disappeared. Welcome to authoritarian, my friend, comrade.
Mm-hmm. Well,
It's true though. It's true. This is not a gotcha moment. It's a fact. And also, you could probably read this book here. This one here. This by he's got a PhD in economics. Robert Spalding. You know, he's obviously very pro-America. He was in the Air Force, of course, but he outlines a lot of it in this. You know, facts. These are facts. These are people getting their lives ruined by doing business in China. Fact, 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 fact. Sorry, but that's just a fact. It's just a fact. People are getting ripped off in China. So that's, and so therefore China has no right to be arresting and stealing our technology. Anyway, look, again, I'm not talking about decoupling. I want free and open trade with China.
Okay, so again, I don't know much about this story. I'll definitely go and have a look at it after this
Don't know
interview.
much about a lot, okay? so far, you haven't convinced me of anything.
You're taking your funny pills today, Dave. Relax.
This has been a funny debate or discussion anyway.
So there's definitely a lot of cases. You're absolutely right, where there have been intellectual property theft, where foreign companies have gone into joint ventures with a local Chinese partner, and they've been ripped off. Right, that's definitely true. When I did an internship at the Australian Chamber of Commerce, they had a bunch of seminars for Australian businesses with kind of legal professionals who specialized in Chinese law to kind of help Australian businesses become aware of those risks, right? But at the same time, I will tell you that in the Australian Chamber of Commerce, they do a like annual report on business, like Australian business sentiment in China. And I'll just give you some statistics from the 2019 report, which said that 71.6% of businesses reported optimistic 12-month outlooks in China, and 81.5% were optimistic for the 5-year period. So the actual wide scale on a broad level, business community is actually very optimistic about their dealings in China. And I'm sure they would have factored all of those things into account, you know, into their optimism.
Okay, so 2 points there. If you have a disagreement in China and you go to a Chinese court, okay, 99.99999% of the court cases are ruled in favor of the Chinese person. Foreigners lose the vast majority of court cases. You can look it up. My understanding is that if you go to court and you go to civil court at all over any sort of business disagreement in China, 99.99, like literally it's almost 100% of cases are ruled in favor of the local Chinese person against the foreigner, no matter how grievous and how obvious it is. So that's a fact. Second, you said that there's a lot of great business sentiment in China. Now, how do you know that they're not being very careful what they say publicly so that they don't get hurt when they go back to China? Because we all know that if you say anything bad about the CCP, well, you might get screwed over when you go back to China. Fact, it's happened to so many people like me. What do you think will happen to me if I go on a little holiday in Shanghai? You think I'll be able to freely run around the streets without, you know, being run over or arrested? Hell no. That's how an authoritarian regime behaves. So that's why we have so many people in the business community in Australia being very careful what they say publicly. And then we go back to what you said about Scott Morrison publicly announcing to, you know, the public something about business and, you know, our economy and blah, blah, blah. That's what he's saying publicly to avoid more sanctions, because we're dealing with an authoritarian regime that every time you say anything wrong about China, they tell you that you're insulting the feelings of 1.4 to 1.7 million Chinese people. And you're not allowed to insult them, or they're going to rip you off, because that's just how they behave, right? So, so yeah, I think I've kind of covered those two. But look, let's just assume that business sentiment is positive. because I guess we can't get into the minds of all those people that actually put that forward. But I will say that if you go into a civil court in China and you take on a local, you will lose 99.9% of the time. Fact, comrade. But yeah, anyway, look, I've enjoyed it. I guess, is there anything else you want to talk about China? I'm hungry.
Not particularly. I'll just say keep an open mind. Don't believe everything you hear. Think critically. Try to diversify the news sources that you listen to. And you know, I've changed my mind on a range of things on China. I'm happy to get convinced either way, and I think that's kind of the general intellectual attitude we want to promote.
100%. You should definitely take in as many sources as you can, and try to find what the commonalities amongst all of those sources are to try and get to what they all agree on. And then you'll get as close to the facts as you possibly can. And this is how I do my research. I might seem like I'm a CIA agent pushing out propaganda Steve Bannon style, but a lot of this research is my own. I'm a nerd. I'm a total freaking nerd. This is all I do. And it's fun. And so hopefully I have convinced you that, you know, a lot of your theories so far, I've been able to punch massive holes in them so far. And so hopefully I've been able to convince you that, you know, authoritarianism is not the way, comrade. But yeah, I guess the biggest problem with Australia today is we have wealthy baby boomers bringing up spoilt little shits that go to university, they learn a lot of theory, they don't get a real job, and then they don't actually put all of their theory into practice, into the real world. And that is creating this plutocracy of incompetence, which is the total opposite of what is happening in China. And in China, they have to some extent, a proper meritocracy where they choose the best and the brightest from all of their schools, and they get the best opportunities to go into the CCP. And that is why we're losing, because we have this plutocracy of incompetence at the top in Australia, and these fools are selling out our country, and they're siding, and they're making a lot of bad mistakes, and their arrogance and their pseudo intellectual bullshit, because they don't really know what they're talking about. And I think we've kind of proven that today. But anyway, I've enjoyed it. Thanks for coming on, dude.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Appreciate you having me.
See you later. See you later, buddy.